hands in the air like you just don't care or something, so people know that you helped organize this. Come on, Jim, you can do it. Wave your hands in the air, Jim. There you go. Taylor, Sarah, others that have been part of putting together this week-long event, which we call our Assets-Based Community Development Symposium. It looks different than we've done. This is our third annual. Looks different than we've had in the past. Different, but yet wonderful. And if you've already been at a session, maybe like do a little wiggle. If I can see lots of you wiggling, see, woohoo, look at the wiggles. I love it. So I've been following along this week, and we're not done yet. It's Thursday afternoon, and there's still so much more to come. So thank you so much. And I also, all the community partners, and I would be amiss not to say thank you to the Ontario Trillium Foundation as well for the financial support for today's session and the week long. What I'm going to do is, again, just so we've talked about mute, so everyone might want to just practice turning their mute on. It's down in the left-hand corner of your screen if you're on a computer. Stop video if you're like, someone's passing by behind you and, they're not wearing enough clothes or something for this appropriate time in the day, just to spare your family, something like that. So that's handy. We are going to be using breakout rooms today, so we'll walk you through that when we get there, but that will be simple. All you have to do is say accept and off you'll go into a room that's near the end. You may find it helpful at the very top right hand corner of your screen, you'll see the word view. If you click to speaker view, you will see a large picture of the folks who are speaking there, and that's kind of helpful too, rather than trying to have to find their voice in one of the many boxes. So I will switch over to that myself. So with that, I think we are going to, this will be live streamed, a portion of it, to YouTube. So if you don't want your screen on, and you just prefer not to have your face, we will be pinning the speaker voice, but just for privacy's sake, if you feel like you want your screen off, then that's totally cool. We fully respect that. And soon Taylor's gonna put us over to the YouTube stream, just so you're aware of that. When we get to the small group portion of our time together, though, we will turn that off, and none of that will be recorded, any of your voices there. So hopefully I haven't missed anything. And what I'm going to do now is just do a little bit of a land acknowledgement. So as we begin today's conversation about connection and assets-based community development, it is critical that we ground ourselves in the histories and futures that imbued the spaces we currently sit. Across this amazing digital network we've cultivated here are numerous stories of land treaties and stewardship. As hosts, we are located on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral peoples. This land is part of the Haldimand Tract and captured with the Two-Row Wampum Belt Covenant and Dish with One Spoon Treaty. These treaties instruct us to honor the original peoples of this land as the stewards of this space, to embrace and celebrate the ecology and networks of nature that grow here, excuse me, and to live lives of peaceful non-interference. We urge each of you to become familiar with the treaties and nations of the land where you live in order to more wholly inform the work that you do and more deeply connect with the concept of community that we are discussing today. And if you, at this point, if you haven't already done so, it'd be great for you to share in the chat maybe who you are and where you're coming from. Just to give us a little bit of information about where you're coming from today. We'd really like that. We would also like to acknowledge the lineage of disability justice advocates whose work for the cultivation of more inclusive online spaces has informed so many of the ways that we're able to easily connect during COVID-19. We are grateful to the generations of thinkers and activists who came before us to instruct and inform the resources, accessibility tools, and social distancing techniques that have become a lifeboat to our communities during these distance times. So we want to really encourage you to engage in this space. Use the chat. We will, Sarah will be over here. She's on your screen somewhere. We'll be looking at the chat. Please please do use that. And we will have a question and answer period too, as well as our small group. So yeah, we really would love to. This is a session about connecting in unexpected ways. And we hope that we connect in some unexpected ways today together. So if you do have any technical issues, Nancy and Simeon, you can direct message her in the chat, and she's here for you as a backup, as a support person. She's just waiting there to help you out as well. So without further ado, I am going to switch over here. And I want to introduce our speakers to you. We have a panelist of 4 people. I'm pretty excited about this. So I'm going to start with Sam Moon. So meet Sam Moon, everyone. Sam comes to us from Norwich, England. So all the way from England. So it's like 6 o'clock-ish his time. Sam works for Norwich City Council in the community enabling team. And Sam endeavors to take a strength-based community development approach, starting with what communities are best to do first, with the passion, skills, and gifts of those who live there. Some of that work has ranged from resident-led litter picks, communal garden ownership, to full community shade green spaces, co-production in grant projects to develop space, skills and stuff, which is I think a community connecting resource tool. He is truly an assets-based community developer. He's part of something called the Camarados. I think he's really quite a pirate on the side. I think he's a board gamer, a bit of a comic geek. And he's also, during the pandemic, which you might hear a bit more about today, a founder of something called Find City Neighbors. So I'm gonna pass it, I asked each of our speakers to bring an object that sort of represents them a little bit. So I'm gonna, Sam, if you could just share your object with us and just tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you, Risha. And thanks ever so much for inviting me here. It's really lovely to kind of be here with everybody. So good evening, good afternoon, good morning to where everybody is. I've brought this postcard, which I'll hold up to the screen there. And that's Find City Neighbours postcard. And the reason I brought that is Find City Neighbours is a campaign and website to encourage and inspire people to be more neighbourly and build relationships with people before they need them and they need you. And it came off the back of myself and my neighbour setting up our own sort of WhatsApp mutual aid group in our street, linking in with other mutual aid hyperlocal group neighbours in the Norwich area. And long story short, created a website to produce that. And that postcard is one of the 50,000 postcards that were delivered to residents across Norwich, just to kind of inspire them to talk to their neighbours. And the website findcityneighbours.com has bits of resource and links, and the postcard itself to support people to be more neighbourly. So although it's a kind of a lovely website and a campaign, it came off the back of a relationship and friends in my own street, and then what happened kind of from them in terms of like neighbours connecting and building relationships with people in Norwich through my work and through his work at the University of East Anglia.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you, Sam. That is great. I would like you to meet our next panelist. I'd like you to meet Duncan Rees. Kat comes to us from Stockport, England. She is the founder of Curators of Change, founded that in 2017. She is featured in the book, How to Be More Pirate. She's involved with the Ideas Alliance and the People's Voice Media. She works with a variety of people and organizations, including Be More Pirate, the National Co-Production Advisory Group, Think Local, Act Personal Partnership, BBC Sports, Health, Social Care, community groups, and independent businesses. Curators of Change is driven by the desire to shift the emphasis from what matters to systems and processes to focus first on what matters to people and communities. There's a lot I can tell you about Kat, but she's also a camarado, which we're going to hear a little bit about today, an active citizen in spoon rooms and community conversations. And yeah, she's she's pretty cool. I'm pretty excited that she's here. And Kat, can I turn it to you to share your object that you brought with you?
Yeah, I have so many objects. My desk is just full of loads of stuff. I'm gonna share this. This is a cushion. You can see what that says, can't you? I have to share that. I've got it on a badge as well, but you can't really see the badge very well. So I was very overjoyed to receive this in the post. But this is from Camarados. Being a bit rubbish is one of the principles of Camarados, and I obviously that's the adult version of the. It's okay to be a bit rubbish. Obviously, after the watershed, it's not quite after the watershed here, but not far off. But yeah, no, it's really important to me because I think in this space of connection, and my other objects, sorry, I had to bring two because I'm also a pirate, and pirates like to rewrite rules. So and piracy and doing things in ways that are a bit unexpected is very messy. And actually a lot of being in this space is about giving ourselves permission to be a bit rubbish, and giving ourselves permission to push boundaries and do things a bit differently. So yeah, all the work that I'm involved in with various different organisations and stuff. My background is local authority and voluntary sector in the UK. I've spent a lot of years working in change from within the system, and just got to the point where it was so frustrating. I kind of described the system as the Navy, if we want to use nautical terms, and ground it in the golden age of piracy. And there's myself and an increasing number of people across the UK and actually across the world who are kind of grasped hold of this idea that actually, if we really want to make a difference, we have to find ways to challenge the establishment, but we have to do that in ways that make sense to us and not in ways that make sense to the system. And so yeah, there's this lovely thread running through everything that I've kind of done over the last few years. And one of the hashtags that I often use is everything is connected, and often in the most unexpected ways. Yeah, and it's just reminded me I've got another object that I should use in these spaces, which is a penny. Well, that's a story for another time. A squashed penny, even.
Oh boy. I'm so looking forward to this. Thanks, Kat. Yeah, I want to hear about the penny too. Good stuff. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about Joe Erpenbeck. Some of you have already met Joe, our next panelist. Joe is a consultant and faculty member of the Assets-Based Community Development Association, or Assets-Based Community Development Institute at DePaul University. He provides training on ABCD and shares stories from 25 years of experience in communities across the US and Canada. Over the last 30 years, he's worked with social service agencies, neighborhood groups, faith communities, most recently a lot of libraries, schools, civic groups in the United States and in Canada, helping to build more connected neighborhoods where everyone belongs. Prior to this work, Joe worked with people with disabilities in the areas of employment and community connecting and self-determination programs. Joe's been the director of ABCD Vancouver and in Cincinnati, Ohio, working with staff from multiple agencies, facilitating connections and building partnerships with local organizations, businesses, citizens, to build up community capacity in neighborhoods, for getting neighborhoods to care for each other. He is currently providing training and support to community agencies, service providers, neighborhood groups, and participants really do appreciate the interactive conversations, and Joe's just full of amazing real life stories, and that's you're gonna love the stories he has to share today. Joe's been just a great mentor for Community Living Brant, so we know how much we appreciate him. His work is highlighted in Peter Block's book, Community, the Structure of Belonging, and also Andrew McKnight and Peter Block's book, The Abundant Community. So I'd like to pass it. I'm actually gonna share a screen for Joe. And oh, I accept that I can't because the host is disabled participant screen sharing. Oh, shoot.
Okay.
You should be good now.
Try okay, now. Thanks, Taylor. I can, that's beautiful. Joe, do you want to tell us a little bit about the picture that you have for us?
I'll tell you the story about this. I moved out to Vancouver from Cincinnati, Ohio about 8 years ago. And I was involved in a lot of community building, a thing called Building Caring Communities. That a report had come out from the Vancouver Foundation saying Vancouver was one of the loneliest cities in North America. People were very disconnected. They had done all these research focus groups and found out most people didn't know their neighbors. or thought they had a gift to offer. And this was probably no more true in the neighborhood I moved into. And I did do a good picture of this because this is my front yard. If you go to the right or left, there's big bushes, alienating. So you can't see into people's front yards or see your neighbors. And I'll tell you a story a little bit about this, but I wanted you to kind of see what this was and the 3 stumps that I'll be talking about, and how I want to share this story later on, because for me, a lot of this can be so simple and just trying lots of things and just putting yourself out there and showing up and seeing what happens. So I'm thrilled to be here today.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. That's great. And last but definitely not least, I would like you to meet Taylor Berzins. Taylor is a coordinator of Belonging Brant, which is a new initiative that supports citizen groups that allow people to share their gifts and passions with others in the community. Belonging Brant's goal for people is for people to be connected and experience belonging. Taylor's other community involvement, just a taste of it, is the co-administrator of the Brantford Caremongering Efforts, which is a mutual aid group on Facebook. She is a member of the Fruits to Fruits initiative, which is a food sharing initiative. She is also part of Brantford Pride, as well as being an active member of her neighborhood association. So lots going on in Taylor's life. She has a background in journalism, social work, and social justice. And a little tidbit, if you share sort of office space with Taylor, you'll know how much she enjoys looking for fungi in the outdoors. So that's just a little thing that I can tell you about Taylor. I'm pretty sure she's not going to share a fungi with us right now. But Taylor, I'm going to turn it over to you to share what you have to tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thanks, Risha. Yeah, actually, it was a toss-up. I have some dried mushrooms at home that I almost brought in, but I didn't today. Yeah, it's always weird to hear information about yourself read out like that, but thank you. A bit more about me. So I live, work, love, and play in Brantford, and Brantford is home. I love Brantford so much, and I'm excited that you mentioned my affinity for mushrooms and fungi, because I like to always describe that I think in fungi. And I'm really excited to be having this conversation with folks because Kat already mentioned threads. And for me, community building work is all about knitting together mycelial networks and little networks of connection and communication that are rad and thriving. And I'm excited to be able to do this work in many, many ways in this community that I love so much. And the object I brought today, my little brother is 11 and he's just like a really wonderful human. And I asked him to draw a picture of me, and I don't know if folks can see this, but this is what he drew. So it's a tiny, very masculine looking person smoking a pipe. I have no idea where that came from, but it reminds me of a philosopher, and I really dig that that's maybe how he sees me, and perhaps that's how I might be taken up sometimes in community. I say a lot of big out there things, so I appreciate that, and yeah, thank you.
Oh, I love that picture. That is awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm so excited to get going. So we're going to start. What we're just going to do is just do rounds of folks. And the first question that I have for our panel members, and maybe we'll circle back to Sam, it's just to ask what you've been doing to connect with others. And, feel free to share a favorite story about connecting in the last little bit.
So I'm going to sort of go on talking about the sort of find city neighbours thing, but particularly the personal bit for me. So just in terms of in the UK here, about 12 months ago, I think it's probably the anniversary this week of where it all kicked in. Saw lockdown was going to be coming, and spoke to a few of my neighbours that I've a sort of friends with, that I hang out with and do board gaming with. Said, shall we do like a WhatsApp group thing in our street? I live in a cul-de-sac just on the edge of the city in Norwich, and there's about 50 or 60 households. And in terms of doing that, I wasn't really sure myself. I had my own doubts about whether it would, anybody would be interested, and kind of, not fussed at all. But reached out to friends and said, shall we do this and give it a go? And so we just put like a little letter together and we dropped it around people's houses. And it really took off. And by the end of the week, there was probably about sort of 40 or 50 households all part of that. And then we went into lockdown. And it really was that thing in terms of people beginning to connect with one another that hadn't done so much before. It's a relatively friendly street anyway, and we have done occasional street parties. And I'm also very conscious that I'm lucky where I live and it's neighbours who kind of talk to one another. And I'm kind of very conscious that that's not the case for everybody everywhere else. But some of the highlights that came from that is people began to discover one another and in ways that they hadn't kind of anticipated. So there was all the looking out for one another in terms of picking up shopping and sharing things and picking up where the flower was and who had stamps and things like that. But and there's been so many lovely things that have come from it, but one of my highlights was there was a neighbour about 5 doors down that I didn't know myself, a lad who lived on his own, and he was a big Queen fan, as in the music Queen, as to a kind of royalist, but he was a big Queen fan, and he played in the Queen tribute band and played keyboard, and so that was his thing. And he overheard his neighbour next door playing the piano, and that was his thing. And so, but his neighbour played lots of kind of Bowie and the Beatles and sort of stuff like that. And so he was on the WhatsApp, and on the WhatsApp said, "Oh, I've been hearing my neighbour next door play the piano. I'm a big Queen fan. I play keyboard. Would people be interested in doing some sort of music event, physically distant, sort of safe music event, one weekend? And if somebody can help me, I can get I can drag my keyboard outside and we can set up and create a music event." And so nobody knew any of this beforehand. And then over the next few weeks, people started sharing ideas, and other people saying, "Well, I play saxophone and I do this and I do that." And there was music sheets going backwards and forwards. There was songs being sort of worked out. And within a couple of weeks, we had a music gig in the street because one person who lived 5 doors away overheard his neighbour playing the piano. And it was just this beautiful thing that happened, and then became sort of organised by the people in the street.
Sorry, I'm muted. Awesome. Thank you. That's such a great story. I love that. And just that how just someone who didn't even probably expect it was unexpected for himself to be joining into something like that. That is so cool. Thank you, Sam. That's amazing. And
what was exciting is he kind of put himself out there as well, not knowing what the response would be like. And then people started lifting him up. And it is the currency of encouragement that then created things, and then people contributed to that. And then when the event, it was a glorious day, and there was somebody playing a saxophone, and they're playing, it's a beautiful Weldon Baker Street, sort of up and down the road. It was amazing.
Oh man, what a joyous time. Yeah. And so good on him for having the courage, eh? That is awesome. That is so awesome. Excellent. Kat, did you want to tell us about how you've been connecting with folks maybe in some unexpected ways?
Yeah, got another object. So it's actually a year ago now. Yeah, Sam's got his spoon. I've got no wooden spoons left in my kitchen now because they've all been converted. But even Richard's got a spoon. That's amazing. As obviously the whole kind of pandemic thing was really beginning to take hold in the UK this time last year, almost exactly a year since we went into full national lockdown. And I think particularly in Greater Manchester, where I am, we've never really come out of a full national lockdown. And so our entire world kind of went from somebody who was on the road quite a lot, engaging with lots of different groups in lots of different organisations all over the country, to suddenly finding myself kind of stuck at home along with the rest of the world, quite literally, and engaging with people, in an entirely virtual way. And I'm somebody who you would people would say, oh, go to this webinar, go to that, whatever. And it just like the thought of webinars and that kind of thing was just so alien to me. And I just wasn't interested in engaging with people. I just didn't get that sense that there was any opportunity to engage or connect with people in a meaningful way. I suppose just to give a little bit of context as well in terms of my journey over the last year, it's nearly exactly a year since my dad died as well. So I was in an extremely kind of strange space, watching the whole kind of pandemic unravel around me and the whole kind of knock-on impact of that in terms of people coming to a funeral and even organising a funeral, and the funeral directors and people being told at the very last minute that they couldn't bring cars with them, and just seeing how connected everything was and how that was all just unravelling through that whole experience. And then Camarados, who kind of create the spoon rooms, who again were very much in that space of creating physical space for people to connect, decided that they were going to set up spoon rooms. And the first spoon room, we've got our first year birthday tomorrow, in fact, of spoon room. So we're hoping a lot of people will come back. It's just the most amazing online space where they wanted to create something that mimicked their public living rooms, which were a real world kind of space where people could just come and connect with no agenda. But the challenge of doing that online, because you can't just create a space where people can come and go and you just kind of let things happen without any kind of structure or intervention. So they created this amazing thing, spoon rooms. And I can remember it was when I met Pip, who's become a very active member of the movement as well, was in my breakout room on that first spoon room. And it was just coming into us, I was absolutely terrified. The thought of engaging with people at all at that particular point in time, having gone from a space, I'm quite introverted naturally, so that thought of engaging with people that I didn't know, and going into a space and just meeting different people terrified me, but went in and they'd set it up in such a lovely way of a bit of space for kind of some mindfulness, just kind of grounding us, and then popping us into breakout rooms of 4 people with just a very simple set of questions. And the set of questions that we used for the first few weeks were just things like, what do I feel in my body right now? What have I messed up lately? What's made me laugh or smile? What's keeping me awake at night? Just these very gentle prompt questions, and then just 3 minutes on the clock in your breakout room, going around in turn just to kind of talk about those, and me just sitting there thinking, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just going to crumble into this, complete mess with everything that's going on around me. I did, but came out of that thinking just that profound sense of connection that I felt, even just in that first, and they were an hour and 15 minutes. That's all it was, online with people, 30 minutes in these breakout rooms and coming back, and that time for reflection was just so profound. And I think had I not had that experience very early on in lockdown of going into a virtual space, of being able to connect with people in that way, I might just have retreated completely. But actually what I've seen is how people have taken what's been happening in that kind of spoon room environment into lots of other spaces, as I have, and experimented with, and just creating that space for people to connect. And even only just last week, I was in a session where somebody was saying how they just couldn't get their head around this online world, and how you just couldn't connect with people in the same way as you could in the real world. But being able to come back with something and say, actually, I think you've missed something, because the sense of connection that we can create in this virtual online world has been, in my experience, quite profound and actually quite life-changing. And some of the things that have emerged out of that have been, quite precious. I think I can't, having lost a job partway through the lockdown as well and everything, but everything that's come out of that has just been quite amazing. So spoons. That's the answer. For me.
I love it. Thanks, Kat. You're making me reflect on some of the experiences that I've had through the pandemic in this virtual world, and how I didn't expect it to be so rich. But what I'm also hearing you talk about a little bit is the gift of the stranger, and finding yourself in an unexpected place with people you've never met, and the kind of crazy magic that happens with strangers. Yeah, maybe that's something that we can dig into a little bit more. That is really cool. I'll turn it over to Joe to tell us a little bit about his stump story.
Thanks, Risha. When I moved out to Vancouver, I was busy with this group called Building Caring Communities, and we were showing up at events all over the city, trying some of the things I talked about on Tuesday, pop-up events, all kinds of asset mapping, showing up at a kids fair and having kids do an asset map. But I was so busy, I was realizing I didn't know people in my own neighborhood. And part of it was just kind of the landscape. All the houses were usually broken up into at least 4 units. There was an alleyway or laneway behind the houses with usually carports. And in front of the houses, these big 6-foot tall bushes. So I could walk to work, which is why I moved there. And you would hear people on the other side of the bushes, but you really couldn't see them. One day I went to the dollar store and bought 3 bags of these guys, and decided I would try an experiment. The first day I got up early and put 2 animals out on one of the stumps. And each day I added an animal for about 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, and then I kind of backed off. And then I would add one every 2 or 3 days. When I would come home from work in the evening, the animals would be scattered all over the place. Sometimes they would be in a complete perfect circle, like they were at some kind of all-day staff meeting. Other days, they were all kinds of animals, from dinosaurs to frogs to spiders. Often I came home and the 3 frogs were all on top of each other. And I felt that curious. And you could tell people were interacting with the space. Some days the lizards were someone had positioned them all in the bark of the tree. Some days they were scattered all around the dirt. But a curious thing started. Well, one day I came home for lunch, and I met Jasper and his mother, Diane. They lived 2 doors up, and they called it the neighborhood zoo. And they thought the guy who lived on top of my unit, Dean, that it was something he created. I just kind of played along and listened. And she was telling me how they had met the twins who lived behind them across the alleyway, who they had never met before, and their mother, because they like to come to the zoo and get the 3 frogs and take them on for a walk in the stroller before they took a nap each day, and how they hadn't met them and how people were getting connected around the neighborhood zoo. A curious thing started happening as other animals started showing up. The set of the small neon hard plastic animals showed up. I didn't put them there. Woody and Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story showed up. Some would stay for a while. Some would stay permanent. This big hippo that was in the initial slide showed up, and it was there for a few days. And I was leaving for work one morning, and my neighbor saw me leaving, and he said, "I saw your sign at the zoo." And I didn't know what he was talking about. And I walked out there, and the sign was on the tree in the initial slide. You probably couldn't read it, but it said, "Missing, Hilda the hippo. Have you seen Hilda? We're looking for her return." And a couple of days later, Hilda showed up. And I didn't put the hippo there. I didn't put the sign there. But it was curious how this thing took a life of its own, and how, my 3 bags of animals ran out. I didn't put any more there. I biked up there last week. I live probably 5 miles away from that now. And I'll put a picture on my website or my Facebook page later on of what has happened. The zoo still exists. They've got bushes now around 1 stump, so it's overgrown 2 of the stumps. So it's 1 stump, but there's a whole collection of I don't think any of my characters are there anymore, or neither one, but it's been 7 years, almost 8 years. It has also expanded across the sidewalk. And there's a tree now with like this little ladder for little people or little creatures. There's doors for like animals. There's bird houses. It's amazing. It's a beautiful work of art. And it's just across the street from the zoo. I share this story because this is so simple. A lot of this is just so simple. It's trying things. It's being curious. And I think in a lot of this, it becomes very personal, and looking at how you put yourself out there and try some things. And also, I think one of the biggest things I've learned is giving up control. And we can't set everything to make everything just right. And literally, my neighbor Dean saw me out there when I was biking by. My old neighbor Dean saw me when I was biking by last week. And he says, I really think our neighborhood zoo ought to be in the Photo's Guide to Vancouver. People should come visit this thing. And he was talking about just the legacy that's been created in that. And he was thanking me for it, but literally, I said, really, it's you and everyone here that's brought this thing alive. And now his son, he was little at the time, now he's turning into a young man, told me the story, which I had never heard before, how his son had to get up every morning. As soon as he got out of bed, would run out, come down the stairs and run out there in his pajamas to see if there was any new addition to it. So you just give up control and you see what happens. And it could have been a flop. It wasn't. It lives on. So I think that's the beauty of this kind of stuff, making it very personal and seeing how people interact with it.
Well, it's a great story, Joe. I love the longevity of the zoo and what it does to connect a neighborhood. That is amazing. Yeah, the kids who live in that neighborhood will never forget that zoo. Hopefully there'll be zoos all over.
Like the hippo. I mean, I think that's what we all want. That we want, these are the stories about plastic animals that, altogether cost less than $10. But we all want to be like Hilda the hippo. When we're not showing up, that people miss us. Mm-hmm. And people check up on us. Oh, haven't seen Risha in a while. I should check in. What's going on? I should ask around, make sure she's all right, especially during the time that we're in right now. Someone asked, did Hilda come back? Hilda did come back, stayed for a while, then disappeared again. But whoever put it must have taken it back, because the searching out for Hilda the sign didn't go back up.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for caring about Hilda, Sam. That's awesome. I'm going to pass it to Taylor to tell us a story about connecting in unexpected ways.
Yeah, thank you. These stories have been so lovely. And I think COVID has been such an unexpected moment. And I'm new to my role in Belonging Brant. Belonging Brant is a new thing. And for us to be doing some dreaming and scheming during COVID has been really, really interesting. My experience is kind of opposite to what Kat shared. I'm an extrovert, so being in this moment of COVID has been really, really hard, and not being able to run around and engage with community in person and just see and talk to all the people. It's been challenging having to keep distance and not embrace folks in the ways that, I'm familiar with and I thrive on. So something that we've been trying to do through Belonging Brant is finding ways to connect with community, to begin building trust, to begin talking about this project and connecting people to the work we're up to in ways that respect public safety, respect each other, are informed and aware of the pandemic and what's going on. And also kind of similar to what Joe said, connecting in a way where we're giving up control and just kind of seeing what happens, and just that added layer of weirdness in this moment that none of us have ever contended with. So we're all kind of learning on the fly and figuring it out. And I love the conversations around creating virtual spaces. I know that's something that we've been playing around with a new online drop-in space called A Place to Be. It was born out of a drop-in space that existed in the physical world before Belonging Brant started. And it was this lovely space where people could come and it was exactly as the name was, like a place to be. There was no hard and fast rules about what the place was. It was exactly what community needed it to be each week. So trying to replicate that or create something online has been a really interesting experience. And I think what Sam shared around his neighbor just like going for it, like totally being brave in the face of rejection and just putting himself out there and giving it a go. That's kind of the practice that A Place to Be has been. Putting up some posters and flyers and some Facebook posts and saying like, hey, come join us in this virtual space, and people just taking that jump. It's been really exciting just to see complete strangers just hanging out online together. We have weekly themes that are picked by community and just engaging through some of those conversations. We had one really awesome week where we talked about hidden gems in our community and just listening to folks like riff off each other and share these awesome spaces that exist in Brantford and Brant. And I've lived here my whole life and I learned so many new things about the community just being in that space, which was awesome. And it's so exciting just to see people just, and trying these new things and giving it a go. Something that we also want to be mindful of or have been contending with is what happens when there are folks in our community who don't have access to internet. So organizing and connecting in these ways, what does it mean when they can't join us? So one of the things we gave a go was we put up some posters around town in places like laundromats and just different convenience stores and various spaces for, we're calling it Hotline Belonging. So we just threw some questions on this poster and put up our phone number, and the answering machine it's kind of ridiculous. It's just my voice asking a bunch of questions and offering like, leave your answer at the end, which was a whole thing. Answering machines are the worst. But folks have been doing it. Folks have been calling and leaving us these really wonderful messages, and we've been able to create connections in the community. Somebody who gave us a call and he just like listed all of these wonderful things that he loves about the community. He started a group. Their first go is this Friday, and they're called the Nomadic Walkers. And that's just going to be a space for people to mask up, hang out outside, wander the community together with notebooks and sketchbooks and share stories. He's a newcomer to Brantford and wants to know more about what's going on in the community. And I just think that's really lovely. We made that connection by putting these weird posters out and just hoping somebody would give us a call, and they totally did. So these have been some pretty unexpected ways that connection has been forming just through this new random project that's happening in the middle of a pandemic. So I'm pretty impressed by the capacity community has to connect and be brave and just go for it. It's been really cool.
Taylor. Yes, that was a thrilling day. Someone called. So exciting. So lovely. And so exciting to see someone, a couple of threads there. Again, just someone stepping out and giving it a try. And us not really having, folks not trying to control it at all, just letting it happen. So that's cool. I'm just circling back through you all again, just with the question, with connections happening, what do you sense is changing with those connections? Is there anything that is really striking you that you've been really enthused about in the last little while as you watch people make connections? Sam, did you have anything to share on that?
Yes, I think there's lots of things that are changing, and particularly as streets become more connected, it starts to shift that sort of power dynamic of people being sort of helped and fixed. But where streets connect with each other, they are able to offer help and then also ask for help. And so it becomes in terms of it becomes the power dynamic becomes there. So it becomes that mutual element of it. And I think in terms of one of the Camarados things that one of the principles of the Camarados movement is that when someone's struggling, rather than helping them, ask them to help you. So I think there's those things that are naturally happening when so in terms of the WhatsApp street, it could be anything from, can somebody recommend a good builder, to I need something being picked up, or has anybody got advice or anything like this. Asking people for help creates this lovely space where people have an opportunity within the street to help their neighbours without it being a service led, with created almost like our own service, our own local economy. So in terms of the neighbourhood has become that primary agent first to be able to support one another. So I think those are the things that I've seen really change in my street, but also across Norwich and also across the UK in terms of kind of other stories that I've heard elsewhere. And the other thing that I've seen a lot or quicker is when new people have moved into the street, are very, very quickly sort of welcomed. So is that welcoming the stranger thing that is kind of happening kind of very, very quickly and very present, where very sort of they're able to go on in terms of the group, or there's other neighbours who may not be on the group who'll be able to talk to them very quickly and say, hey, there's this thing, but if there's not, that's fine. And then when we're talking to those people, they're going, God, this is like a really friendly space, and this is sort of is brilliant. I never realised this, and so it becomes kind of warm quite quickly. And I know it's not unique to my street, it's not unique to Norwich, but it's something that I've kind of certainly noticed a lot in the space of 12 months.
Oh, that's beautiful. I think it is, and it's not everywhere though, Sam. I don't know that I would describe my street that way. I think I'd love to come and visit your street. That sounds lovely. Oh my. Kat, do you have anything that you're really noticing that's changing?
Yeah, I think it kind of follows on from what Sam was saying, but in a kind of more system sense. So some of the work that we've done with Camarados over the last few months has been in partnership with People's Voice Media, and that is actually not going out obviously because we can't go out anywhere, but listening to people's stories, and just giving people the space to actually talk about how the pandemic has affected them, how they've coped with very, very kind of gentle conversation starter, and then just following our curiosity and recording a lot of those stories and capturing some of those insights. And so I've had the privilege, I think, of listening to and speaking with a lot of people and really hearing about how the pandemic has affected them. And I think hearing, particularly in this country, the impact, the system or the state or the way that people have been supported historically, I don't know, in other parts of the world, it hasn't been great, actually. It's been a very paternalistic, very kind of, we know how to fix you. Again, another one of the Camarados principles is about not fixing, just getting alongside people. And I think it's been that realization for organizations and services particularly, that actually things are quite bad, but they've been a bit stuck in terms of knowing how to respond to that. And so there's been lots of spaces and lots of opportunity for us to have those conversations and reflect some of what we've been hearing back to people through those stories. And even just today, one significant moment this morning when we were reviewing some stories from just one community in West Yorkshire, sort of Halifax, with 5 very, very different stories, 5 very different experiences from people who worked in the area to support people who lived and had been supported by organisations within the area. And we got to the end of it and we were just chatting about what are we learning from this? What are the themes that are coming through? And just that moment when everybody kind of stopped and paused and went, the big thing here is the human interactions that people have had. That's what we're hearing. It's the human connection bit that is really making a difference in people's lives and experiences. And like I said, lots of different examples that led to that. And we hear lots of stuff in this country. And I was drawn to a blog a few months ago that was titled, that talked about how we need to reset the relationship, or this is an opportunity. The pandemic has given us an opportunity to reset the relationship between the state and communities. And something just grated within me when I heard that. And I just thought there's something not quite, we're missing something here. And actually, if we push that further, and a lot of the spaces that I've been in and a lot of the conversations that I've been having, this morning and over the last few weeks with people, actually what we're drawn towards is this idea that actually we've got an opportunity to reset the relationships we have with ourselves and with each other. And if we can do that, if we can take that focus off trying to reset the relationship that we have with the system or the state onto actually how we reset the relationships we have with ourselves and each other, we can achieve some quite, remarkable things. And I think, but pre-COVID, I was experimenting a lot with this kind of way of working in spaces and kind of bringing the pirate sort of stuff in. Golden Age pirates, that was their thing. They weren't interested in changing the world. They were interested in changing their world. The system had absolutely run them over, in a sense, exploited them for years, and then just ditched them with nothing. And they had an opportunity where they could have either fought back, or they could do something and take control and create a society or a system or some conditions that they wanted to work within. And that's where they focused their energy. So you've got that beautiful little point of history where Golden Age pirates came together and created something that has actually formed the foundation of a lot of what we know, what we know now. And so that whole kind of connection thing, and experimenting with some of that, and really pushing people to think about their own experiences and how they feel in terms of experiences they've had of receiving support and information and advice about things, has led people to stop and think, oh, actually, yeah, I realise, as somebody who works in the system, who manages finance in the context of social care and makes decisions about how people can spend their direct payment or personal budget in relation to their social care, and then sends them letters saying you are not allowed, you're not authorised to spend that money in that way because it's not written down in your support plan. To have a moment of connection with another human being who is on the receiving end of that, and then say, I get it now. I get that actually I don't need to change the system. I don't need to change the way I relate to the system and the way the system's working. What I need to do is change the way that I'm relating to you as the person who the system is trying to support, and understand that actually if I was you, I wouldn't live my life by a support plan on a piece of paper. And how mortified would I be when a brown envelope came through the door that said, actually, you've spent, £10 on tea and coffee for your support worker, but it's not in your support plan, so we need that money back, or don't do it again, or whatever. And who was able to go away and just completely shift the way that he practiced things and get his team to stop doing that. And then go away and rewrite all the letters that they were sending to people to be more human as well. And you just think it's that simple. We've got stuck in this world of system serving system, and I think what I've seen shift, and I think because we've been able to be in so many more spaces, and because we've been able to bring much more diverse groups of people together to have these kinds of conversations, people are really beginning to see that. So to hear the woman who worked for Halifax Council this morning just to say, actually, I get it. We do need to learn from this. We need to not have plans and processes in place. We strive to get things perfect on paper. We have to have a business case or a business plan or a strategy. And actually we don't. We just need a code, a very simple code by which we can live. And then we just need to get on and do stuff. And we need to try things and fail. I mean, Joe's example there of the zoo, it could have failed, but it didn't. It took on a life of its own. And if it had failed, so what? Something else might have happened. So yeah, I could go on about this for ages in terms of learning, but I know we're restricted on time, so I better stop.
No, that's beautiful though. Thank you so much, Kat. That's just that for any outcome, that means that we've been intentional in our time together, and listening, and seeing that shift in system, not just serving system, and not trying to fix each other, but just to be human together. That's beautiful. Thank you. Joe, did you want to share anything about what you have seen change as a result of people connecting?
I think one of the things I would share is a change in me, and kind of probably, I'm very opposite of Taylor, where she talked about being an extrovert and how this time is challenging for her. I can very much be an introvert. And the idea of showing up at places and asking questions, and I'm a curious person, but what happened to me is I learned that people will talk to you about their gifts, and they will share great, amazing stories. And all you've really got to do is be genuinely interested, and everyone has something. They all have a gift, and when we create a platform, whether it's a mini zoo, just paying attention to what we see in our daily lives and interacting with that and asking a question. Peter on Monday or Tuesday, Peter Fula, who talked about some of Peter Block's questions, and just ask, an open-ended question about what inspired you to do this, how it just opens a platform for people to talk about their gifts. And when you can start to do that, how that just creates a possibility for relationships. I'm amazed at the amazing amount of people I've met who do some very simple but extraordinary things. And I'm also amazed at the impact it's had on me as you do this. And a lot of times when I've worked in agencies, I'll have people actually track this. And a lot of times it can be interesting to see how tough for staff and an agency, how tough they can struggle with this, to record. Oh, I met Toby. He loves classical music. He plays a bass guitar. Just the people and the groups that you discover, because it's so, and to interact with that. But I think the more that we can do that and pay attention, the more it becomes a habit. And I think it changes our world. And I think Cat stories of just looking at how you frame this and the symposium's a great example of how an adjustment was made given the situation in our world right now. And I've been on a number of these throughout the week, and we've got people from all over the world connecting and making the most of this. It would have been easy to thought, oh, we can't do that this year. Versus let's give it a go and see what happens. So I think, and I guess the one thing I'll add is just when you, and Peter Block was just moved to Cincinnati. We'd started the ABCD Cincinnati Pride, and would comment listening to some of our stories that you change the world one conversation at a time. And he's big on one room at a time. But what we were doing a lot of times, and we were doing it with people, we were trying to connect, making sure we were communicating well about what the gift we saw in them. But then that conversation, then we did it in community, just became a natural conversation that we would have. And he thought, his comment was, that's the most intimate thing you can do to a person, is acknowledge their gift, because it happens so rarely. And one of the exercises I usually have folks try to do is when you see something, just reflect it back, and in a genuine way, not in nothing that's not genuine. But when you see something like that, acknowledge it back, and just how powerful it is, and how that really intensifies and exponentially increases the possibility for a relationship. And I love what Sam said about, especially in all this, because there's always gifts present. It's not about fixing anything. It's about looking for opportunities to create a platform for people to connect.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, just starting with the gift. Love it. Love it. Taylor, did you want to share anything about things that you've seen changing because of connecting?
For sure. I think something that co-facilitating the caremongering page has really taught me is just like we're in a moment with no roadmap. So this is a really weird time for all of us. We don't have answers. We don't know what to anticipate next. It's kind of a roller coaster, and it's all colorful too, like green, yellow, orange, red, gray. It's so weird. We're in this really weird moment and we don't know what's right around the corner. but yeah, it's created a moment of kind of radical imagination. We're dreaming about new futures. We're connecting together to think about what does come next, what is working right now, what wasn't working before, and where are we going, and how can we do that intentionally? And I think that it's also reflected a lot of what Kat said. Sometimes systems don't move fast enough. So if somebody is in urgent need of food and they have specific food that they need, leaning into your neighbors and what that can look like, and just folks' capacity to like open up their gardens, open up their fridges, go do grocery runs for each other. Neighbors who maybe wouldn't have known each other, putting things up onto this Facebook page and connecting just to take care of each other in a way that is fast. It moves way faster than systems, and it's specific. So for instance, we've had folks make requests for things like, hey, like I'm just having a really bad week and I need like a case of Pepsi, and like no questions asked, we'll get you Pepsi, like no worries, we've got you. So no rules about things being, coded as like healthy or good. Like we're here to take care of each other. We're here to show up as neighbors. And if that's what you need right now, we've got you. So yeah, imagination and specificity. I think that those are big things that are coming out of this moment of connection. And I think it's really, really great. Yeah, that's what I've been noticing.
Awesome. Thank you, Taylor. I think, one of the things we were going to talk about sort of advice that you all may have, but I think you've all provided some pretty good advice as we've been going through, and this notion of, the pirate code and the not fixing and small steps, and yeah, just the acknowledgement of people's gifts in our intentional time together have been some of the things that I've been taking away. I'm wondering if people feel brave, if you want to put a question in the chat or raise your hand, and you can use the reaction button at the bottom so I can kind of like see you in doing that. If anyone has a question for the panelists, and then or even better, have you been connecting in expected or unexpected ways in the community, and in doing something that you think other people would really benefit from hearing about right now? Because I'm sure you've all been doing something cool during this past year. Is there anybody, or if you have a question? And I'm just going to go to here, or feel free to put it in the chat.
Lynn,
and I will.
Lynn had a hand up.
Yeah, Lynn had a hand up. Sorry.
Oh. Go for it. Thank you.
Okay. Well, first off, I want to thank you guys all for coming together for this, because I live in Maple Ridge, which is a very small town, and so it's really nice to feel connected on a broader scale. So it's been really helping. There's been two things that have come out for me over this last year. One was an invitation, and we are now in our 1-year anniversary, where a person I just knew said, we're going to get together every Tuesday on Zoom, and we're going to call it the 7-Song Salon. And so what came out of that is, like, we had up to 14 or 15 people at a time, and we were doing it twice a week. And someone would take the responsibility on of sharing 7 songs. And with the 7 songs, you could tell stories about it. And so at the beginning, many of these stories came from, well, these are the songs that meant something for me during this period of time. Or someone said, I was traveling in Africa, and this is the music that really spoke to me. And so they took it. And now we've been doing it twice a week. Before November, we finally went, okay, we're all running out of ideas. Once a week is good. And one fellow who I'd never met, but I didn't know any of these guys, said, I've got probably deeper relationships here than I have with many friends, because we talk about our stories, our histories. So that's been really fun. And we're also very excited saying we will be getting together to see face to face. So that's good. The other one is that I've actually done as a result of this is I've been doing some volunteer work with folks who've been homeless and are now living in modular housing, if you will. And so I brought in some artwork, and then we actually just had art supplies and just said, whatever you want to do. And if you want to do something different, we'll see if we can get the supplies to you. But then COVID hit, so we all had to stop that. But I had a conversation with one woman, and I said, when you come in, what do you need? What's provided and what's not? And I mean, even things like toilet paper wasn't provided, because it's supposed to be independent living, but it's not really. So out of that, a friend and I said, well, we're going to just start put welcome packages together for people based on what they've said. And we kind of went, well, we can't do it by ourselves. So even yesterday I put out, and we've got all these small neighborhood groups, that share kind of what I think many of you are talking about. Someone saying, I need X, someone goes, yeah, I got it, I'll be there. So we've been putting that request out to say, here's the packages, here's what we know, can you help? And sometimes people can just say, well, I can give you some toothpaste. That's fine. That person who's going to be brushing their teeth every night is going to be thankful that they don't have to provide that for that first month. And one of the things that I did, because it's been a contentious issue in our community. It's really driven people apart, the issue of homelessness and folks who are suffering from addictions or whatever. And before, I used to kind of grapple with that or fight that. And I thought, there's enough people out there who are kind of going, yeah, we want to support them. So my friend and I were doing this. We just kind of went, well, we're not going to engage in that. We're just saying, what do you need? Who are the people who are saying, well, yeah, I want to support them? And rather than seeing it as giving it to service industry to do it, which someone had just said about service versus neighborhood, I think it was the neighborhood. And we have now begun putting letters in just to say to people when they arrive, we just want to welcome you. It's like a welcome package. You don't know the communities, but here's a few names so that it doesn't feel so, well, who are these people? And people are responding. People are, and I'm quite delighted, not just about that, but seeing these requests on Facebook pages, and really there's I haven't seen any fight back with anybody, any judgments at all. It's more like, well, I've got this, or I can help you move, or I know a good electrician. So that's quite a delight for me, as seeing that change within this community that I'd been seen as very in conflict, to step away from the conflict, because there's a lot of people who are saying, well, let's just do this. So that's something I wanted to share. But again, I want to end with thanking you guys for putting these together, because it's really helping me.
Oh, thank you, Lynn. Thank you for that encouragement. And wow, what a great story. I love your Zoom 7 songs.
Yeah.
Lots of inspiration on that. But then your story of, again, more stories about connecting through mutual aid, with no questions asked. I love that so much. Another great example of that. Simon, you had your hand up. Are you still having a question?
No, I was going to share something about just about connecting as well. I think there's been a shift as the pandemic's gone on and people have caught on, and Zoom and those types of connections have wharfed in. There's something about the connecting the physical with the electronic, and seeing places. I'm a big craft beer fan, and have really enjoyed some fantastic online beer sampling, where you can go to breweries and pick up a 6-pack, and they do the online tasting with you and stuff like that. And I think combining the physical aspects of something and still sharing that is a really important piece. And I think for me, I wasn't very much on board with a lot of the online stuff at the start, and I think it is because of the physical side of it, right? And I think as I've developed throughout this and some of the events we've done for some of our fundraising, we've really tried to drive home some physical similarities and sharing those physical things with the people you're doing the event with, to share in a kind of not necessarily a deeper connection, but a different way of connecting as well. And I think that's something that this time last year would never have even been on anyone's radar. So I like really seeing how how people have started to develop those kind of connections through technology and going back to the basics alongside of it.
Thanks so much, Simon. And it's just making me reflect on a comment that Karen had in the chat earlier, where she said, I think that Zoom, for those who can access it, is an equalizer of sorts, reducing social anxiety for many and a balanced way to connect, provide opportunity to just be there in a shared space as an active listener, speaker, or observer. So yeah, great. Also, we have a question here from Rachel, which is, maybe we'll look to one of our panel members to take a stab at before we try to a breakout group. How can we create physical spaces while maintaining distance to share ideas, offer offers of support or asks, or how can we create a neighborhood feel in urban or rural areas? So maybe even the first one, how can we create physical spaces while maintaining distances? Anyone have a thought on that?
I can chat a bit about some of the pop-up work we've been doing. So that's just been grabbing a couple lawn chairs. I didn't have an appropriately sized table, so I've actually been carrying around a small piano stool and going out into parks with coffee and just engaging in conversation. So we have a couple questions that we ask folks, and then it just grows from there. And one of the questions we ask is, what does belonging feel like? And we also ask just like, what is your favorite thing in your neighborhood? And just learning and connecting with folks around those things, the stories that have come out of those spaces. It's really amazing. And yeah, just hanging out in a park too, or just like in different spaces, it can be a really funny and strange experience, especially if you're there with a lawn chair. You look pretty unusual, and like always socially distancing. The lawn chairs are all separated, like very far apart. Got a mask on. I have hand sanitizer next to the coffee on our weird little piano stool. And just that cautious approach from people who are in the park, like, okay, I'm curious, what the heck is this? What's going on? And then we just spend time together and engage in some really awesome conversations. And that's happened for us in both kind of an urban setting. So in Brantford, and our work expands out to Brant County. So we've also spent some time in some more rural places as well. So it's been really cool and a really fun way to just like meet and engage with folks and kind of get a pulse on what's going on.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. I remember Taylor coming back to the office to say that she had actually met someone and heard the story that someone had learned that there was a pandemic because there was no roll up the rim to win. Just thinking about equality and the internet and how information, and this fellow had shared like no idea until last March. He went in to buy a coffee and wanted to know where his cup was. And so for those of you not from here, it's a yearly tradition to roll up the rim of your coffee cup and win another coffee, usually never the car ever, but maybe someone must win the car. But yeah, really, that's how we found out. And just like the stories that you hear. Joe has just put in the chat that he has a friend in Ohio who's been hosting these kind of conversations, and he casts a really wide net and to see who shows up. So there's a link there to Joe's website. And my puppy has made it into the room. So my apologies for any commotion happening in the background. I saw Angela Fell, who is someone that some of us know over in England. And I saw she posted a picture on Twitter, and there are those fold up lawn chairs, and there's like a yellow 6-foot thing that goes between the lawn chairs. It says public living room, but it's like to show how to keep the distance. So I think there's lots of neat, catchy ways of being outside together in safe ways to be able to connect. So that's awesome. Oh, Sam has his spoon up, and then Karen.
So
Sam.
Just kind of with my kind of work head. So I work for Norwich City Council and the community enabling team. And obviously this story is very specific to here, but it might relate to kind of wherever you are in the world. And one of the things that we do kind of within the team is support residents, very much encourage and step out the way of residents who want to take over the space where they live. So there may be communal gardens where they live, which would have very, very kind of limited maintenance on there. And often residents will approach us and say, well, how can I do something with that space. And so what we've seen is lots of residents get interested in that. And there's one sort of resident in particular who I've been working alongside past sort of 6 months, who following his own kind of experience where he lives, where he was attacked, wanted to kind of shift where he lived to become better rather than to kind of disappear kind of away from it. And with other neighbours and encouraging other neighbours, started looking after the communal garden where he lives, to make that space much nicer and use that as an opportunity to build relationships with his neighbours. And so we've been working alongside that, saying, look, we can sort of you can have permission to do that. We can formalise that so that contractors don't come and mow over all the flowers that you've grown. So that works for you. We've got bulbs, we've got tools, we can link you in with other bits, we can buy your wheelbarrow, those sorts of things. But what he's been doing is using that as a way to build relationships with his neighbours, to make his community a better place and build that. And he's had pushback from some neighbours saying, why are you doing that? Your council should be doing that. Don't you be doing that? And he's going, well, I really like to do this, and come and join me. And as those flowers have been growing out the ground, they're going, oh, that's nice. That's really nice. Oh, I might come and help you with that now. And he's literally growing his community there. And as a council, we're just supporting that, stepping out the way, but then doing the things that he can't do, like repair trees and things like that, or cut things out or repair stuff. So that is about building a relationship. So in terms of answer to the question of creating physical spaces, is there may be spaces around you that communities can get around, obviously within whatever COVID kind of regulations you have in your area. And it's then through those conversations with neighbours around something that everybody enjoys, people begin to really discover kind of what's in their community and the gifts and the skills and the passions that other people have, which then lead on to other things.
Great story, Sam. I love that. Kat just said it's beautiful, great way of co-creating different conditions for change. It was just beautiful. And Kat's also dropped a link in the chat. I highly recommend this story. It's called James and the Lemon Drizzle Cake. And it is a beautiful story from Angela Felt. It will melt your heart. It will make you lemon drizzle cake, but even more, it will make you want to set lawn chairs up out in a public space to meet people. It is just the beautiful, crazy, wild things that happen when people connect in unexpected ways, and the beautiful, beautiful stuff that happens. So yes, Kat, did you
just very quickly? Angela beautifully illustrates the complete nonsense of the relationship between community and state in that blog as well, and her story is told against the backdrop of a green social prescribing fund that has been set up in Greater Manchester as well, and the complete irony of the amount of money that's invested into a fund like that and managing it when James is just and what they're doing in Angela's community is just happening without any money and without having to apply into a green social prescribing fund. So yeah, it's a good read.
It's a beautiful read. Thank you. It is perfect. We have about 10 minutes left, and we did say that we're going to take a shot at, just some small groups. There's about 36 of us left here on the call. And I'm wondering